Welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining us. So we prepared this webinar slash stream slash conversation, and we are actually going to talk with Valerio. He's the creator of Neuron AI. We're going to talk about more about Neuron AI and everything else, of course, during this presentation and during this conversation. So the whole idea or the motivation to start with this was that we hear from many developers. They are thinking about AI. They are obviously reading a lot about AI, and for example, PHP developers, they tend to be a bit concerned about that they are missing on the AI kind of wave because they are in the wrong language, and that they have to learn about Python and all of the other related technologies. And I think that today is kind of the whole point is to show that it's not actually the case. You don't have to learn a new language. You don't have to rewrite your whole application to add AI capabilities to your apps. And we're going to do this in the context of Neuron AI, which is basically a PHP library, but Valerio likes to call it a framework, which I agree, because it's a lot more than just one single, let's say, feature. And yeah, maybe Valerio, you can also add a bit more about your motivation. Why are you here?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. First of all, thank you for coming to me with this idea. I love it immediately to join in this kind of, you say, well, like a conversation, because there is a big story behind this, the born of this project. And I was surprised at the beginning of this experience when I first published this project, because many PHP developers, I don't know, they thought that this kind of need to go to other programming languages was in some way sustainable. But in my mind, after first experiments with developing this kind of system, looking also in other programming languages, in my case was basically JavaScript, because it's a bit closer to my personal skill, but also Python obviously has a big ecosystem in this field. And it was clear to me immediately that it was completely unsustainable. If you have a focus on working on PHP, and also your products, basically plural, because for many software houses, freelancers, developers in general, we tend to work on a lot of stuff. If all of this stuff are built in PHP, basically the AI to create his magic need the application context, the application data. Maybe you need to couple this kind of system with your authentication users, the database information, etc. So it was basically, in my perspective, it was really impossible to implement this kind of system in another programming languages that is completely an outside entity from your PHP context. This was impossible to be a long-term path to build this kind of AI feature inside PHP software. So I started to try to experiment for my needs, because Neuron was born basically in the journey of creating the AI bug fix that is an agent integrated into the inspector monitoring tool. So I started basically this project trying to solve a problem for myself, because I was looking uh, on outside in internet. Basically, I open Google search and try to find some PHP library framework that can pair what's going on in the Python ecosystem, in JavaScript ecosystem. For months, it was basically I found nothing, so I continued to work on this project internally, and at a certain point I understood that it was quite good, if I can say, and I imagined this opportunity to release this artifact as an open source project. Obviously, there is also a business case behind this move from our side, because Neuron is supported by Inspector as a company. But the problem that we are trying to solve is very clear, and it's make uh, PHP developers able to implement this kind of system staying in PHP. And it was quite strange, because not all PHP developers seemed really I don't know. I received some criticism about this project. It seems strange, but it's true. And so, one of the point that I want to make clear is that it's not AI development in general. I'm learning uh, the communication from the feedback that I'm receiving, publishing contents, articles. Here we are talking about AI agents. That it's obviously not AI development in general.
Mhm.
For this kind of AI, machine learning, this kind of stuff, maybe PHP it's not very good, a very good fit. But AI agent need some frameworkish artifact that help developers to interact with all the underlying technologies that are needed to create this kind of intelligent component inside an existing PHP application.
And I think right now we are at a point where AI agents are becoming really useful, right? Because only 2 years ago, you know, any kind of it was very hard to expect any kind of reliable outputs, consistent outputs. Today, I think they are faster, they are more reliable. The tooling has become way more mature. Um, and yeah, I think now is basically it is the time because you could miss it like 2 years ago. It's very unlikely that you have that in the last 2 years that there were not a lot of production ready systems built on AI that were deployed and used. I mean, there were obviously, but not everyone succeeded, right? A lot of proof of concepts were not actually put into production. But today, I think you can achieve a lot more, and it's not it's not a it's not a Python thing. It's not a JavaScript thing because it's something that's essentially any kind of language framework
Yeah,
which can access internet and call an API can use because uh, to be to be fair, it's also not something that you run on your machines, that you run on the infrastructure, because right now, I mean, you can obviously, but the best models, the fastest inference comes from the providers, right? It comes from the cloud. I mean,
yeah,
cloud. So OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, it all comes from them. Everything else, if you want to do something yourself, host it yourself, I think you will still lack a lot of capabilities if you do that. So yeah, absolutely, there is no downside of staying inside of PHP and trying to build a AI powered app or add a feature that is AI powered. So just to give like a bit of a frame, what do we want to do with this presentation or this conversation is that we want to really make it for developers and people who are making development decisions. So the same way as Valerio, you were looking at it and looking for libraries that
Yeah.
I guess you were looking for libraries to speed up your development, right? I imagine that you would not do everything from scratch.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It was the main motivation was just the same that we do with basically any other task that we work when we trying to implement a new project. We 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 try to learn what we need, and we start to look around to find some ready to go solution. So I think it was really clear to me that every programming language will start their personal journey into this AI agent development. It was my approach was basically looking uh, these implementations in the same way as we work on a web application development, because it's about patterns. It's about a tool. Neuron is basically designed to cover this role. It's a tool that helps developers to implement and take care automatically in a certain way all of these patterns that help developers to orchestrate all the underlying technology, starting from the LLM, the underlying model that you connect your agent to, and all the other stuff, databases, tools, etc. So it's like implementing a common pattern that now emerged, maybe, as you said before, 2 years ago. There are a lot of experiments, but now it's quite clear what we need.
Mm. Maybe just to give a bit of a context, you were mentioning Inspector. Maybe you can tell us more about it. I think it's an important puzzle in this story.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe something about you and then the whole
Yeah,
company.
for sure. I am the CTO and co-founder of Inspector.dev, that is a monitoring tool, monitoring platform that was born in 2020, basically during COVID. We are a team of three co-founders from Italy, and rapidly the approach we had with Inspector, that was creating a tool that is really simple, developer friendly, with a good developer experience, spread quite good in the PHP community, and we now serve a couple of hundred of customers in more than 40 countries. And now we decided to take this move into the AI agent development with Neuron. And Neuron is a very, very young project, because it was released 3 months ago. So it's going on.
Yeah, and I'm Iztok Smolic. I'm actually from Ljubljana, Slovenia, a neighboring country to Italy. And I'm the CEO of Agiledrop. We are essentially a software house. We help also other development companies by essentially becoming their teammates, becoming their part of their development team. And yeah, our motivation is that we want to stay in the loop of this next way of software development, which I think is not an overstatement at all at this moment. Um, so yeah, the question: can you build AI apps with PHP? Yes, and just to explain why are we so confident is because, as I mentioned before, we the way that we do AI on this level that we're talking here is we have an API on the provider side, and we are essentially making requests to those APIs with API calls. So nothing other than you are used to when you are communicating with other APIs, such as, I
Yeah.
don't know, payment gateways, CRMs, So that fundamental technology is basically the same, right? And the other part is how your application is going to be handling those responses, because it is a bit nuanced. So, if when you receive something from the payment gateway, it's a very structured answer with a very deterministic information. Here you have to treat it a bit differently. So the way that you are communicating, it kind of it's a different mind shift, and you need kind of support from the frameworks that you're using, the libraries. And the question is, are those libraries available for PHP? They are. I actually found this list of basically everything related to AI in terms of libraries. It's quite a big list. Uh, Most of the libraries on this list are actually specific libraries of implementation with a specific API. So, for example, there is a well-known Open AI library,
Yeah.
and that can connect only with OpenAI, and then you have libraries for, or SDKs for other APIs as well. Today we are going to focus on Neuron and what you can do with Neuron, and actually why I also personally think it's one of the best options right now, because of such a huge case. I mean, it covers so many cases that modern, let's say, agentic application would actually need to
Yeah.
use. So maybe just to give a very high level, we talked about Neuron AI, but what what would be your main pitch basically?
Yeah. Neuron is a I call Neuron a framework, as you say before, because uh, our intention is to support several use cases that you can create a AI agent. And Neuron is the way PHP developers can create full-featured AI components into an existing PHP application. This kind of claim, I thought a bit before jot down this claim, because uh, in the way Neuron was designed, it's to make it easy to create AI agent as a very standalone components into an existing PHP application. There are obviously other libraries that are spreading all around the community. When I was looking for a library or framework to solve my problem, I obviously tried these libraries. I'm talking about LLElephant or Prism that is a library tied with the Laravel ecosystem. And I thought that this kind of project weren't able to open to a wide level ecosystem innovation, because they have too many limits. From the Prism point of view, it's strictly coupled into the Laravel framework. It's a library. It lacks a lot of features like memory, the automatic management of memories. And so I believe it from the beginning of this development that a library like this, a project like this, should be a PHP project, not a Symfony project or a Laravel project, because this is the need to create AI agent is it will be for all PHP developers. So we can create different libraries for different ecosystem. The PHP nature of Neuron, I hope that will drive a much bigger community. For example, this is one of the first benefit I thought when I implemented the framework. And so this is basically the goal that we had in mind to help PHP developers to create this kind of standalone component that can encapsulate into this agent all you need to create this kind of AI branch of your existing product. Because the challenge in my mind is at least in the first wave of this new software development experience is to innovate existing product. This is one of the
Yeah.
first, the most important problem that Neuron is designed to solve.
So it's not disturbing the existing code base essentially.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And also uh, guaranteeing the ability for when you implement this AI agent into your code base, uh, help you to have a portable component that
Mhm.
maybe you can use also in other contexts, or move into another application. The same capability that you implemented with a kind of agent, you can also use the same structure into another project. This
Yeah.
was too important to me. Uh,
But also, one of the things is that you are implementing different providers, right? The providers are very important part here, right? Either
yeah,
the LLM and the embeddings. So we are also not locking in any kind of providers. So you
yeah.
in theory, it's just I think two lines, and you are able to switch between OpenAI and Anthropic, right?
Yeah, or maybe a local
Yeah,
running
yeah.
model with Ollama. We also created this Ollama provider. This is an infrastructure that you can use to run the LLM, open source LLM, basically in your local machine or on your server infrastructure in the cloud provider. And this is also uh, part of the consolidation that I saw during this learning path, uh, because as you said before, 2 years ago everything is quite in experiment stage, so maybe every provider implement offer their kind of patterns. Now it's quite consolidated. The usage of tools, the MCP, for example, the MCP protocol, that is a standardized way to make the LLM interact with your tools, services, external services, etc. So this kind of pattern becomes uh, quite standard de facto.
Mhm.
So you framework developers like me in this case was are able to implement uh, this kind of general interface, and you can create concrete implementation for many different providers. So developers with just one line of code can change a provider with another, and their entire agent infrastructure continue to work without any refactoring.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned a couple of time agent, right? I personally also don't really. Yeah, I think it is a bit of a buzzword. But also I know that in fact it is different
Yeah.
than just like sending a message and receiving back the message. But let's break this. So.
Yeah, yeah. Just a bit of introduction, because then I let you add your perspective, because I really know that starting, I remember 2 years ago when I started to look at this kind of stuff to because I have inspector, so I tried uh, to find a way to integrate these agentic systems. I started to learn about AI, and it was very tough to really have a good thinking, a good understanding in the first place, of what is an AI agent. So I really understand people that struggle a bit in the first stage of their learning process, but I hope that looking at the neuron code, in the sense consuming the documentation, where you start to experiment implementing an AI agent with the flow that we designed in the neuron documentation, it can become clear more rapidly, even if you have not have a clear theoretical definition. Okay, it's a practical things in my mind, creating an AI agent. So
Yeah, and I think maybe just but when you say that you don't need to understand theoretical part, I think yeah, we are at a point where you actually don't need, yeah, because I see it as a specter, and then you have like machine learning scientists, and then you have people who don't know about it, and I think you can be, yeah, you can be intentionally not trying to learn too much of it, I think, because it is
yeah,
it is kind of a black box, and
yeah,
you would have to go really deep into the rabbit hole to explore that rabbit hole, but I don't think that you need to, right? um, some basics maybe, but on the other hand, I think it's enough maybe for now, or to begin with, to learn about what are the APIs that enable you to do certain things. Just like an intermezzo, I think. You don't. My point is that you don't have to be overwhelmed by the theory of AI. I think in this case.
and it's very easy today because if you connect on YouTube, it's a wave.
Yeah. Um, so essentially, when you first start uh, building or connecting with an AI APIs, you realize that you are sending the message and you're receiving back the message, right, from an AI. And then the next step is, how would you make that response to actually do things for you, right? And this is where it
Yeah,
becomes agent, because it does things, not literally, but it gives you back the data that you are able to do things, to run things, to execute code, to retrieve information, and you it does it in a way that AI decides what is going to be the next step, right? And it does that very independently, right? I mean, you can basically suggest what could be the things that AI would do, but in most cases, they would do independent actions, right? And some of the practical examples would be that you ask an agent to do some research, and then to basically summarize the research, and to store the outputs of those research into your database, right? And in order to do that, it will have to do a couple of calls. It will do it. I don't know. It will have to go and look on the search engines, find websites, scrape those websites, and then use all that data to produce some kind of summary, and then essentially send that summary information, and your app would be basically storing it. So your agent has, when you implement it, has access to the services, or basically all of the functionality that you would otherwise manually, or users would, for example, manually trigger, right? And why would you want to do that? Because that's actually the promise of AI, is that it replaces the human labor, right? So I mean, I think it's kind of funny, but right now we know AI mostly from the chat interface, right?
yeah,
But it's very limited. So even at the beginning, when we were all using ChatGPT, right? I don't know, you tell it to, I don't know, write me a blog post, right? But still, the best way to for you to do that was to give it some kind of context, a long context usually, and then essentially when it got back the actual blog post, let's say, you would still have to copy and paste it into your WordPress site, and then publish it. Now, an AI agent would do everything
Autonomously.
autonomously, even maybe to the point where you would not even ask it to do it, right? So every Monday at 8 a.m., it would do a research, create a post, and basically publish it, and find images and so on. So all of those things are the big promise of the AI agent.
Yeah, when we start to talk about this kind of active part of this component, it's the time that people start to don't really understand what's going on. I think it was my case in the first place when I started learning this stuff. But I see from comment messages what's going on in the GitHub community around Neuron, but what people asks. And this active part is a pattern that basically is much different than the normal API consuming or web stuff that we are usually able to develop in our everyday work. AI agent, thanks to the interaction with this powerful LLM and under the hood, they can take action autonomously. And this is a component that it's not easy to understand the implication, not only for developers but for everyone. The implication of this kind of active interaction. And this is the most important things that all of the AI guru or YouTuber talk about just to raise the crowd. But this is one of the most important concepts that distinguish a normal API talk, API consuming with AI agent, and the role of a framework that help you to implement this pattern to make the agent able to execute stuff
Yeah,
uh,
that's
autonomously,
that's
basically.
what I was trying to say. I mean, yeah, in the response from the API, there is nothing was done, right?
Yeah,
Essentially, the OpenAI API did not execute any of those tasks,
yeah,
but your code has to be implemented in a way that you can basically parse the response, treat it as, let's say, a parameter for a call, right?
yeah,
For an action. So essentially, like you have some components of neuron, and maybe even broadly, um, any kind of library that does things like that. So um, everything in neuron was developed very nicely, in a way that it's very modular, and you can extend almost everything, which it's very helpful, because then you can do a lot of modification of how the system behaves without having to hack it, right? And the most important, I guess, interface is the AI provider, which is what you talked before. So
yeah.
you have implemented right now, out of the box implementation with Anthropic, OpenAI, Olama, as you said, Gemini, Azure OpenAI. Is that separately, or is it part of the?
Yeah, it's now part of the core repository.
Yeah. Okay. So, and you're adding new ones, and people can also basically write their own
Yeah,
implementations for that. Then there's also obviously all of the other interfaces like embeddings, vector store, and so on and so on. But I think people who are going to start using that, they will immediately see. I think one of the good parts of this framework is that everything is very similar. So it it looks like it was written by the same people, and they follow kind of the same logic, which is
yeah,
nice to work with. Um, okay, so let's build our first agent then, right?
yeah, yeah. As I said before, I believe the real learning experience is just to create your agent class. That's the
Yeah.
point.
So and this is literally it, right? With this, with those three things.
Yeah, this is the basically the minimal implementation of an agent that it's basically connect this entity with an AI provider. It could be OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini, etc. And this obviously is the only mandatory part, because without an LLM, obviously there's no agent. So but it just works like this. Obviously this is not an
This is
agent.
not an agent, yeah.
Clearly it does nothing. It's not instructed around a specific task. Looking at this simple class, it's just a connection with the raw LLM we want to talk.
Yeah. So I think those were those are basically called assistant, right? I mean, in this sense,
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
yeah, it's the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
We tend to talk about the same stuff.
So then the next move would be to add a bit of a, let's say, context to the agent, to the assistant, right? I think this is something that you start soon. I mean, when you start working with this, you're realizing that you're not building something very general. You don't really want to talk with it. You want it to do something. You want it to answer in a particular way, and instructions are a very good way to inject additional instructions to the agent, even instructions on what are the steps, what are the expected outputs, and so on. And yeah, this is really like the basic. I think that for people who are using ChatGPT, this is basically all the functionality that you get out of the service if you use assistants. I think, right? I think more or less you are able to define the instructions, I think, separately. So and with the previous slide and this slide, you are essentially, you have essentially the same capabilities as ChatGPT.com has
Yeah,
in
exactly.
theory.
Also in the UI of the LLM, we can use. For example, I personally use Claude in the Anthropic UI, but it's always the same. You have in your account, you can configure some specific focus that you want your personal assistant to follow when you talk with the LLM. This is basically
This is it, yeah.
the same. And the way I decided to structure this kind of system prompt, it's just, as you said before, just to help developers understand that this is the real first step
Yeah.
to go towards what you want to do with this kind of agent, what you expect this agent you are designing to do, basically.
Yeah. And then, okay, now we send this message along with the background, right? We get back the response, and then we want to send another response. I mean, we want to have this conversation, and we talked before, but it's not clear from the get go that those APIs, they are basically stateless, right? So
Yeah,
they don't really remember on their own your previous conversation, unless, of course, I think if you're using OpenAI Assistant API, but that's not what we're talking right now. And that means that the next API call you make, it starts from scratch.
yeah, and even developers, I discovered during these months, uh, talking with other developers, even developers don't know this concept. They are not often clearly aware of this kind of mechanism. So talking with the LLM, it's not a reinforced learning entities. It doesn't know anything about the ongoing conversation. It's only up to you to send back the entire previous messages in the conversation, to keep in a certain way, to keep in memory the LLM, to keep the LLM aware of what we are talking about during the messages exchange. So this is the first role that the framework play uh, in this to automate basically this stuff, because otherwise you have to implement this kind of work to collect all messages you send, all the responses, collect in a structure, and every time you call the LLM, send all the conversation back to the LLM. So basically, the first step that the framework automate, it's just the context window management. This is the
Yeah.
first component that I implemented really in the framework.
And what Valerio says is like it's important to not. So if you imagine if you have a 1 year long conversation, you're
Yeah,
sending 1 year long text and data to the API, and this first of all, it's yeah, there is some limit depending on the model, and then it also becomes just too expensive, and then the Neuron AI kind of cuts off the old messages, the old history, in order to for your calls to the API are a bit smaller, so they don't cost too much or they don't hit the limit, which can happen. Um, and this is why, for example, I think that the memory, like the long-term memory, is also like one of the things that people talking about in AI.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it is very hard to nail actually in this space.
yeah. I'm trying to learn more in this direction, so I don't want to spoil any any kind of future implementation. But it's something I'm looking for.
Hmm.
But to be very practical, look at this stuff in very practical way, because almost the majority of people here are basically technician or developers in some way. Basically, when you talk with the LLM API, they when the LLM respond, you receive also the data about the token consumption that your interaction is consuming. So Neuron internally basically use this information to understand how much long is the context that you are actually consuming, and automatically cut the old messages in the history to respect the maximum context window that the underlying LLM can manage. In this way, basically, you can go on in the conversation as long as you want, but oldest messages at a certain point go out of the conversation.
Yeah.
So this kind of memory has the context window limit.
Yeah, yeah. Which, of course, obviously, if you're just cutting old messages, that can be a problem. I mean, that's why you're looking into the long-term memory solution.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
it's 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 not simple. It's not just like summarizing all the old messages. It's not simple like that because
Yeah, a first step to solve to provide a bit of help in this direction, and it's the vector store, the RAG system that we I think we'll see later in the slide. We'll talk about later. But the long-term memory, it's another kind of system based, for example, on knowledge graph. These are another kind of technology that has other needs. I think it will be another component into the framework to manage this kind of memory.
Yeah. And so Neuron comes with in memory, which means that if essentially as your app is running, is you are storing that memory in RAM. So for example, if there is in single, let's say in single PHP request, if you have multiple calls to the AI, right?
Yeah,
In this
yeah,
case, you will save the chat history. This is especially important when you are doing the agent, which who are doing, because agent, yeah, maybe important part. So when an agent goes on a task, so you send an agent to do a task. In case of Neuron, or in case of an agent, it will also do multiple calls to the
yeah,
OpenAI, right? So
yeah,
first it will ask something, and then it would retrieve more data, do another AI call. I mean, do another call to OpenAI, and then another, until the task is completed. So that's why it's important that you have the history also stored as during one single task execution, let's say.
y-
But you also support file chat history, which would be something, for example, where you would be able to permanently store a chat conversation between a user of your app and AI, right?
yeah. It's a very, very good point, Iztok, because uh, it's not only about the message that you send to the LLM, because internally, Neuron manage this kind of conversation with the LLM and operate on your behalf to complete all the tasks that the underlying model required to the application to do. So internally, Neuron is probably exchange other messages with the underlying model, and all this conversation, that it's not only your prompt, that your initial prompt that you send to the LLM, but also all the intermediate messages that Neuron automate with the LLM are important to store, to make the LLM aware of what's going on. The file chat history basically is the first step that enable persistence. So you can basically restart the conversation later in time,
Yeah.
to continue on the same topic, basically.
Yeah. And for example, if you have multiple users, each user would have its own file with the history and so on.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, you can also implement your own, which would normally be in database, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. A lot of developers are implementing database chat history, because I didn't implement the database chat history in the first place, because at the beginning I thought that there are a lot of ORM, or
Yeah.
I don't know, framework stuff, etc. So maybe developers are free to create their implementation.
Yeah. We will have to speed up a little bit. I noticed the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, for sure.
So I think we will just mention this. So one of the things that you want from an LLM is to have some structured output. So
Yeah,
for example, I mean, when you're chatting on ChatGPT, you get some text back. Usually, it's a lot of, even if you ask it to do something or to reply with something, it actually starts with a intro or with a label of that. So
yeah,
you don't really want that. So that's why there is a way to do a structured output, and I think Neuron really. I remember that I did some first implementation of that, but then what the team did there about the structured output is really great, because
yeah, yeah,
you can basically use like a PHP class which defines the structure, and basically use that PHP class as the guideline for the LMM to output the JSON. So it follows the structure of your class, right? Which is really neat, because you can automatically then get the data and create that class from the data, and you also get validated. So that's a really neat feature.
yeah, yeah. The most useful part of this feature is that you basically get back from the framework the instance of the class
Yeah,
that
exactly.
you
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
instantiated with all the data filled inside. So
yeah.
it's just
So
PHP to PHP.
no, basically, you really reduce the duplication of definitions of a
Yeah,
data structure, right?
yeah, yeah,
And then related to that, the next level is basically the function call, which which is something that we want to be looking at. So in short, function call is when in practice what happens is that AI returns the parameters for your functions that you want to call, right? Um and those arguments then you can directly use in your function. Again, the way that in Neuron this is abstracted is that you don't have to you don't have to uh, then handle the function calls, but automatically those things already happen if you of course follow the way to implement that. So um, we are going to be looking at the example. The example is going to
yeah,
be that we have an agent who summarizes YouTube videos. So we are going to have a user ask, summarize me this video. The user will put in the YouTube video URL, and then LLM will use a third-party service, an API that handles basically that receives YouTube links and gives back transcription, and then that transcription will be then received by LLM, and LLM will basically do a summary of that transcription and return back only the summary. So uh, basically independently the agent will know that it first needs to call the get transcription tool, and then it will know that it has to do the summary and output the summary. So, and I think this is the part where we can look at the actual code doing that, right?
yeah, yeah. It's more easy to see than explain in words sometimes. Can I share the screen? I don't know if you
There are a couple of
can.
questions in the chat, and
Oh yeah, yeah,
we will actually just answer them after.
for sure.
I have an option to basically to select the questions, and I can go through later. Okay, okay, here we go.
I don't know. It's big enough. Maybe.
Yeah, okay, I think this is good.
Okay. So basically, this is the first part. Is what Iztok show in the slide before. We have the connection with the underlying provider, and the first building block is the system prompt. So in this case, I'm trying to focus the agent towards this task, this simple task to ask the user for a YouTube video and then create the summary of the video. And this is the first example of tool. So basically, we can attach this tool to the agent. We can onboard the agent with the tool we want to allow the LLM to use. And in this case, is a tool that allow the LLM to get the transcription of a YouTube video. So basically, the execution part of this tool is included in this method. So basically, we are using an external service, it's Supadata, that I found on looking on the web. It takes an URL of the YouTube video and return the transcription. The things here to notice is that we define a property in the tool, and basically this property that the LLM should provide to the framework, it's video URL, and is basically the same that we have in the signature of the function that we execute when the LLM ask to execute this tool. So
And if you have multiple tools here, the LLM would
yeah,
decide which one to call. It would not
yeah,
just try to call every single
exactly.
them.
It will decide autonomously based on the conversation, based on what's going on in the messages, in basically on what you ask to
Yeah,
do. He autonomously decide to call some tool or another to collect the information he
yeah,
need, or basically to take some action.
yeah.
So just to show an example, I have a script in the public folder. Should be the YouTube script. Okay. What about this video? I copied. This is a random video from YouTube. So the agent basically received the message. Let me read the transcription to generate because the no transcription is available. Okay, it failed.
The API failed. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe this super data API. I don't know. We'll try with another video. What about this video? I hope it can work eventually. Okay, the video is a powerful, environmental, blah, 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 and he will close with the three sentences that I asked to create a list of three sentences to the most important takeaways from the video. So this is just basically the framework that is orchestrating basically the prompt to the LLM. The LLM respond, okay, since I have this kind of tool at my disposal, I can use it. I ask to use this tool to retrieve the transcription. The model process, the neuron turn back the result of this tool that is basically the transcription of the video to the LLM. The LLM process its final response and we present to the user.
So, and building, adding more tools, adding more, let's say, yeah, more functionality. Also, probably kind of starts confusing the agent as well, right?
Yeah, it depends because here the most important takeaway here is that you should focus your agent around a specific goal that you want to achieve, a specific role, basically. Not it's not about task, a specific task, but it's
Yeah,
about a role, and you have to provide the agent with tools that are obviously related to this role. If you start to attach a tool here to book a room in an hotel, it's completely outside of the context. You really risk
yeah.
to make to induce the model to make mistakes, basically.
That's why basically it's so easy to define new agents, because that's what you do, right? You define
Yeah,
multiple agents in your application. You should have multiple agents doing
for specific
niche, yeah,
goals.
niche things, specialized things, right?
Exactly.
And then yeah, limit the number of tools
Yeah,
available.
there are some general purpose tools. There are for sure. In Neuron, we are experimenting with the concept of toolkits, and we are really implemented, for example, web search or the ability to read the content of a web page. These are tools that can be used in several use cases, basically. So they are like general purpose, but it depends on you how to mix this stuff.
Yeah. So usually what you want is, yeah, the basically the search and website extraction. That's a very common use case where you would use a tool, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Then the next big thing which we were not able to touch is the three-wall augmented generation. I think we need to do a follow-up on this webinar for this. Um, Essentially, it's a mechanism to inject additional knowledge into your LLM with your proprietary data, right? And it does that by first searching for the things that it thinks it needs to search for, and then injecting them into the actual prompts. Um, it's a very very high level description of that, but it really involves a couple of things that need some time to explain. But what if someone really knows what RAG is, we can say that Neuron definitely comes out of the box with a lot of advanced usage of that. And again, multiple providers of embeddings, multiple providers of vector databases, re-rankers, and so on.
yeah.
So it's really rich when it comes to RAG, which is yeah, quite good. Um, okay, I will really need to skip that, unfortunately. I think one of the things that I really find very useful when using Neuron with Inspector is, for example, when you just showed us the example when you were running your agent, we did not really see what was happening, right? We did not see what was happening in the background. What was the actual prompt that was sent? Um, and I assume that you will be able to show us
Yeah,
the
this is
inspector part of that,
just
right?
yeah, this is just an example of the ecosystem that we started to implement, launching publicly Neuron. This is just the execution that I did before.
So this is what you just did before, right?
Yeah, just 5 minutes ago. So
Yeah.
it's just what I launched before. So you are able at this point to see what the agent is doing inside during this its execution. So and you here can clearly see the pattern, for example, of the tool call that we discussed. So you run a message, you send the prompt to the LLM. The LLM respond with this kind of response that is the tool call response. Basically, this tool call contains, here is the parameter that the framework pass to the function when it should be run in your local system. And this response is so here is the instruction, and the tool call should contains, here is the result of the this is in Greek, I think, I don't know. This is the transcription of the video. Neuron send back when they call another stream. It execute another stream call to the agent, to the LLM, and the tool call result is stored, and then the final output is the video is a powerful the response we saw in the screen. So here basically you can see all the steps.
And this is very necessary when you are, because it's very unpredictable what will the LLM actually output, right? And if you don't see what's happening, you need now a tool where you can go through all the steps. Because, for example, in this case, you could see that the LLM kind of hallucinated with the
Yeah,
URL address of YouTube, right? It could put in the wrong, not the same YouTube URL than you
yeah.
did, and you would see, okay, so this is where the problem was. Now you need to resolve this by improving your prompt to say use the exact
Yeah, this tool
yeah,
in this, or
yeah,
maybe you are able also to evaluate how the underlying model that you decide to use how is good to execute, to act as
Yeah,
a basic infrastructure to execute your agent.
yeah,
Because this is a very simple example, obviously,
yeah,
but I can assure you that when you start to use 10 tools, vector database, you connect external memory, etc. All this kind of system can become really, really complex quite rapidly. Also, because the easy how it is easy it is we implement this system with Neuron. It's also a facilitator that you can make complex stuff uh, very, very soon.
yeah. Um, so I think that this kind of showed us that you are definitely are able to build AI powered application with PHP using Neuron. Um, so essentially, like we showed in this example, this could be just a little feature in your app. A lot of times, I think now I saw that people were adding, I don't know, some kind of buttons to the text fields where where you were able to, instead of writing, I don't know, I have an example, for example, a job description. uh,
Yeah.
they people or developers put some buttons that wrote the whole job description based on the job title, for example, or something like that. So those are little features which you can essentially start implementing now in your PHP apps, and it's not really so hard to do it. And I think it's a good way to start uh, understanding what's actually happening in the background, because first you can just make it work, and then the next the next step would be to try to understand what was happening in the background. um, so now if we have a couple of questions that I saw.
And
uh,
I didn't say at the beginning that Iztok was basically, I think, the first contributor. Yeah, you were the first, I think. So he have a very good understanding of what we are going to implement with Neuron.
So Michael Kauer asked, can he use Neuron with any framework without a native? So so sorry, in vanilla PHP, right? If you can use Neuron in vanilla PHP.
Yeah, for sure. The project that I just ran a
Yes.
minute ago, it was a simple composer okay, with no framework, nothing, just a script running in the console.
Bojan asked if you're going to be supporting OpenAI assistant and threads.
Yeah, I talked with other developers in the repository of Neuron. There is a discussion section that is basically the forum that we are using like a forum to open question, discussion, etc. The assistant API is that they don't provide much benefit. Basically, the assistant API are the same that Neuron
Yeah,
offer the same functionality that Neuron does. So the memory management, the context window management, automatically managed, I don't know, this basic automation. So
yeah,
basically, it's the same, but the assistant API by OpenAI, they are for OpenAI. You
exactly.
can't switch with other developers. You are locked in basically.
Yeah, I also think that it's not. I would not go that route to use that. First of all, I think it's quite expensive for the very simple database that it is behind, and also, yeah, you are basically locked in.
Yeah.
Um, Bugose asked if you would be able to summarize older conversations. So when you do the cutoff, right? If you would be able to summarize the old, instead of just cutting them, summarizing them to still provide the context needed for the conversation to go on.
Yeah, and an hack that you can do to implement this kind of trick, it could be that sometimes you can add an intermediate prompt to the LLM, obviously underline your backend, to summarize previous conversations, and basically the assistant will respond with an intermediate summary. So when the older messages will be cut off because the context window is becoming bigger and bigger, you can sometimes, but it's an hack. The way you should think at this way, that is basically what the UI of ChatGPT or Claude does when you have a lot of conversation, and when you talk with the new chat in a certain way, the agent, the LLM has some knowledge of what you discussed in all other chat that you have opened before. This is the long-term memory that Iztok mentioned before, and this is something, it's a more advanced stuff that we are working on it.
Yeah. Michael, in a multi-user environment, can I set up a chat history for each user connected to the system simultaneously?
Yeah, for sure. Basically, if you take a look in the documentation for the file chat history, when you create the instance of file chat history inside the agent, you have a key parameter. This key parameter basically separate different conversation in different
Yeah.
files. It's always the same if you implement the database chat history. You have a key, and maybe this key could be a user ID, I don't know, a company ID, or any other way to segment this
Or
kind of.
just basically thread, right? I mean, usually we
Yeah, exactly. They are
thread.
threads, so you
Yeah.
can organize this thread as you want.
Roberto asks if you can create an agent object for each user, and I would, I would try to answer that. I even try to do it very basically dynamically, so creating agent based on the database entry. So I allow the user to select the provider, the model, and all
Okay.
those settings, and then basically I only have in my code I have only one agent, but that agent. Uh, um, that agent settings are all pulled from the database. So yeah, you can actually do that. So I really love the way that you're not locked into this code-based definition of agents. You can really do them dynamically in this sense.
Yeah, it's because we implemented standard interfaces for all the components. So basically, you can switch from an implementation to another with this.
Yeah. For private AI usages, is anything else available besides Olama to be connected to Neuron AI? So is there something else that can be private that you can connect with Neuron AI?
Yeah, in this sense, I can think about, for example, Azure
Yeah.
OpenAI. If you are inside your cloud provider and you don't want to go out, and I think there is the same developer that created the Azure OpenAI is working, I think, for a Bedrock provider that is the same inside the Amazon Web Service cloud
Yeah.
provider. It's a standard interface to stay inside of your private cloud, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I would also say that I think it's actually the Azure OpenAI I don't know, servers, or how do you want to call them. The environments are actually quite good because they release the same time they release on OpenAI, they also release it
Yeah.
on Azure. It's if you have the infrastructure already on Azure, I think that's a very very good way to go. All right. So I think that what could be the next steps. I think the very first step is definitely just to do the composer require and start playing with it.
Absolutely.
Valerio also wrote an ebook. It's available on Amazon,
Yeah.
and you're encouraged to look at that. Uh, then there's also quite a live community. They write a very good newsletter, actually. Always linking with to a good blog post, and there is a forum discussion on GitHub available. And as I said before, I mean, there is so Inspector is a company, but they're offering free tier, and I think it's even if you're just using it for local development. Not sure if you're going to be happy with a bunch of
Yeah.
users testing it like that, but yeah, if you're using it, if you're just playing around with Neuron AI locally, yeah. I think they should also be including Inspector into that because it's so much easier to debug your code like that.
Yeah, in the first place, when we attached Inspector to Neuron, I immediately understand, because it was the same experience with monitoring web applications, etc. This kind of data are a very, very good learning source, because you can really understand what's going on under the hood when you implement something new. You have very clear understanding of what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, just to double down on that, in my first project before I was using Near, I had to build those kind of logging tools myself, essentially,
Yeah.
which was not. I mean, it's just a distraction. With you have too much to do anyway, and now you have to also build the tool to log and display the calls and so on.
Yeah.
So where can people learn more about you, Neuron AI, and Inspector? I have a couple of links here. What is the best place to follow the progress of Inspector? Sorry,
Uh,
Neuron.
yeah, for sure. The newsletter, that there is a form in the home page of the Neuron AI.dev. You can subscribe to the newsletter. I tend to write technical article about what we are learning, not only implementing stuff into the framework, but also we share what other developer uh, let us know they are implementing their agents. We share this kind of experience of the community. So the newsletter, I think, is the best way to stay connected with what's going on.
I'm just looking at the questions as well, so we don't. How can I store informations produced or create an external tool class in a variable accessible to an agent? I mean, the answer is yes. You can do whatever your function would normally do if you would call it in your app. The agent would also be able to do that. So variables accessible to agent, yes, of course, because you can inject whatever information you have in your app, in your database, into prompts, into system messages, and so on. So that's also possible. So thank you. I'm sorry if you're a bit longer than we expected. We will know
Yeah.
for the next time.
Maybe this can become a
Yeah.
fixed appointment, if you will. So
We forgot that we are two Mediterraneans here. So
all right.
okay. Thank you all.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, we will send over the recordings and slides so you can take a look at them and share them with your peers as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day to
Thank
all.
you, Valerio.